It set me up perfectly. Thank you. Thank you. Set me up perfectly for this talk. So the title of my talk today is just 11 more steps. Now, I had somebody ask me before, is this about recovery? No, not those kind of steps, but steps that we take in our spiritual growth. So I want to start by telling a story. You know how I love my stories. About this man. His name is Captain Lewis Rudd. Lewis Rudd is a British Army captain, and he became the first Briton to successfully cross Antarctica. He just did this in November and December. So what he did was he actually crossed Antarctica in what they call unsupported. Unsupported means you do it walking or skiing. You don't have dogs pulling you. You don't have way stations along the way for refueling. You do it all. And so he pulled a sled behind him that weighed about 400 pounds. Yes. And the 925 miles that he went was almost all uphill. Snow and ice. It wasn't a beautiful hike like we have here in North Carolina. It was across a pretty unforgiving landscape that was beautiful in its own right, and yet this is where he slept. He had in that sled, he had his tent, he had his food, he had all the supplies that he needed, and he would go as far as he could and then stop for the day and pitch his tent. And because he did it in the southern hemisphere in December, that's summer. So this is the middle of the night because the sun never sets this time of year there in Antarctica. So for 56 days he did this. He walked across snow and ice. He sometimes was doing it in whiteout conditions, and there were times, and he's all by himself. No one to talk to, no dogs to play with. He was doing it by himself. Now, there was another gentleman who was doing this walk the same time, an American by the name of Colin O'Brady, who started the same day he did, and they dropped them off about a mile apart. They could see each other for a few days, but then they both were on their own. Colin actually ended up pulling ahead of him and arrived 2 days prior to when Lewis did. But Colin actually waited for him because they had started this journey together and they wanted to end it together. So here's Lewis out there. You see the thing on the front of that thing on his belt? That's the compass. Because he's sledding with his poles, and he can't hold a compass, so he had built this contraption to hold the compass out because that was the only way he knew he was going in the right direction. When it's white everywhere, you hope you're going in the right direction. So here's Lewis slogging away. That's a good question. I don't know. So he finished on December 29th, 2018. Just a few months ago. And then in January, he was interviewed on CBS This Morning. And they asked him, how did you do that? How did you survive all of that? And he said, well, there were times when I felt like stopping and thinking, I just can't do this. It's too harsh. It's too long. And he said, then I remembered the 11 steps. And the reporter said, well, what's the 11 steps? And he said, in the early 1900s, just after the turn of that century, a man by the name of Captain Scott had set out to cross the Antarctic, just like he had. He had made it to the South Pole. He and his expedition had made it to the South Pole. They were on their way back, and they were trying to get to a depot where they could supply. They could get food, they could rest a little bit, but they didn't make it. And they perished. They were found a few miles from the depot, and they hadn't made it. And Lewis Rudd said in this interview that someone calculated that if Captain Scott and his team had gone just 11 more steps every day, they would have made it. Just 11 more steps. And so Lewis Rudd says, every night now, as I'm finishing up my skiing and I'm bone tired, I go 11 more steps. I get to the end and I go 11 more steps. And then I know that I'm done. And I've thought about that interview quite a bit. I've thought about the 11 steps and how I can use that in my own life. How can I take those extra steps in my own journey, my own spiritual growth, my own path, when I want to stop back there because I'm bone tired? But if I can take 11 more steps and do what needs to be done by me, then I know that I will have completed my journey. And so this really inspired me, because there's many times when I've wanted to quit and I wondered how close I really was to my dream and my desire. And if I'd just taken 11 more steps, maybe, I could have accomplished what Lewis Rudd did. You know, I've said it here before, and I'll say it again. Consciousness, conscious living is a full-time job. Would you agree? It is not for the faint and weak-hearted. It is not for those who just want to dilly-dally around. Maybe I'll think about spirituality in my spare time. No, because just like in that movie, I'm thinking The Matrix, which was a very metaphysical movie, by the way, when Morpheus holds out the red pill and the blue pill, and he says to Neo, take one of them. The thing is, you can't go back. Once you become spiritually evolved, that is it. You can't go back. I wish sometimes I could go back to an unconscious life, but I can't. Because once you become conscious, that's it. And now I know the responsibility that I have to grow myself. Because consciousness is a full-time job. It is something that I have to make time for. I have to do my spiritual practices, and I have to be willing to step up and do what is mine. Now, maybe it's not mine to walk across Antarctica. I think I know it's not mine to walk across Antarctica. But there are things that I can do. There are things that we all can do. Would you agree? That we have our own jobs to do, and it's ours to do. So there's 3 concepts I want to leave with you today. Oh, this is Lewis Rudd. Whenever I'm on a polar journey now and I finish skiing for the day, I always take 11 more steps. Think about that this week. So the first thing I want you to walk away with today is, this is a do-it-yourself teaching. I wish that I could do a Spock mind meld. Do you remember Star Trek? You know, where Spock put his hand on somebody's head and he could like transmit all the wisdom. I wish I could do that. But that's not the way it works. I have students who wish that I could give them the formulas, the secret of life, that's all they have to do is follow that. Or give me a mantra, that all I have to do is say the mantra and my life will be easy peasy from there on. It doesn't work like that. This is a do-it-yourself teaching. One of my favorite ministers is Reverend Ike. And he said, this is the do-it-yourself church. The do-it-yourself church. The only savior in this philosophy is God in you. That's it. As another minister said, if you're praying to the cross, get off of it. We need the wood. That's not what we're here to do. We're not here to say that someone else did something for us. We're here to do the work ourselves. We're here to be that which we came to be. A fully spiritual being, a full spiritual being, showing up as you. Because when I show up as Sally, that's the God in me showing up. But I can't show up like Patricia shows up or Bill shows up. No, all of us have our own gifts. We're showing up as us. The second thing is be your own laboratory. Now, my teacher told me this many years ago, and I've tried to live it to the very best of my ability. We can talk about principles and spiritual philosophy all day long. But the point is, we have to use them. I'm not interested in what you know. I'm more interested in what you're doing. How are you utilizing these principles in your life? Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science, said, "I don't believe our movement is worth a dime unless something happens." Because that's not talking. That's doing. It's us getting out into the world and showing up, guess what? As love, as kindness, as compassion, as caring, as understanding, as wisdom, as beauty, as power. Going back to Reverend Ike for a second, he was asked by a reporter, what about all the poor people? You have these really nice clothes. How can you wear fine suits? What's wrong with, how come poor people stay poor? And he said, wrong mantra. Wrong mantra. They have bought into an idea that there is something less than. And so what his job was to do was to teach people by living a prosperous life that that's what we're all here to do and be. Are you with me? A few of you are. Are you with me? Yes. Yes. So when we are showing up as prosperous beings, when we are showing up as absolute, capable, wise, spiritual, powerful people, then we're showing the way, aren't we? Someone came to Charles Fillmore once, and she said, last night I dreamt that I could fly. And he said, can you take that passion and that power and pay the rent? Can you live the prosperity that you are? That's what we're here to do. We're here to fly in our own way as prosperous beings. Joel Goldsmith was very, very steeped. He was a contemporary of the Fillmores. He was a contemporary of Ernest Holmes. And Joel Goldsmith really walked his talk as well. He wasn't interested in someone that wasn't doing their own inner work. And he talks about how he became a Christian Science practitioner. That's what he started out in, was Christian Science. And he loved the teachings and he loved the purity. And he said, I can heal. I know that I have that capability because that's what God has indwelled within me. And so he moved to Boston, where the mother church of Christian Science is, and they were encouraging him, put up a shingle and become a practitioner because you'll be able to make a good living doing that. And so he rented a room and he put it out there, but he said, if this principle works, it's not because I'm going in and advertising myself within the church. It's not because people know that I'm here in Boston. It's because I am doing the work and those clients that I need will be attracted to me. So I'm going to rent that room. I'm not going to advertise that I'm there. I'm just going to sit in that room and treat anyone who comes into the room knowing that I have the healing power of God within me. That's a pretty big statement for someone. Talk about taking 11 more steps. I mean, he was ready to prove this. And he said, if I can't prove it, then I know that this is not a philosophy that I can be with for the rest of my life. So the days would go by. One person would come in. Another person would come in. It was very, very slow at start. And he had bills to pay. And he was like, how am I going to do this? Okay, God, I need to know a deeper understanding of what God is. That was his 11 steps, to go deeper within to find out who he was as a spiritual being. Did he really believe this? That God was a source of his being. God was a source of his supply. Not other people, not a church, not a job, not the government, but God and God alone. And sure enough, as people were coming in, he was having healings with them. And then word started to spread. If you want something, go to see Joel. And soon he was seeing about 300 people a day. A day. And he was praying for those people. And he was having healings right and left. Because he knew the power of God that was within him. He knew that he was being taken care of. And his financial woes disappeared. He never looked back from that moment on. He was willing to take the 11 steps, those extra steps to say, what is it that I really believe, and can I go within and know that my source is God and God alone? That's a very powerful place to be.
Oh, yeah.
So Joel Goldsmith, quoted in his biography, he says, the heavens did not open up and pour down $1,000 bills. It came slowly, and it came almost grudgingly, forcing me to acknowledge humanly my lack and inwardly to stand fast in the realization of this truth. So whatever you are going through right now, the obstacle is the way, my friends. Marcus Aurelius said that. The obstacle is the way. If there is something that is blocking you from your good or your perceived blockage, maybe that's the way for you to go 11 more steps. Maybe that's the way for you to have a deeper understanding of truly who you are as a spiritual being on this planet. Maybe that obstacle is the way for you to not only go around, but go through, so that you can know forevermore that there is nothing that stands between you and your good and you and your God. Can I get an amen to that? Amen. You have the power. So whatever obstacle is in your way, if it's lack, if it's limitation, if it's ill health, if it's busted relationships, whatever it is, bless it. Bless it. And say, thank you, Spirit. I can now go deeper. I can take 11 more steps and go to that place that knows that I am supply, I am prosperity, I am beauty, I am love, I am joy. Oh, I'm on a preaching roll here. Woo! All right. So, the third thing, be willing to do what others won't. You know, this is a no blame, no shame kind of philosophy also. We don't blame anyone if you're not getting it or you don't choose to get it, whatever. If you come, you go, whatever. We're not here to hold anyone to this philosophy. We're not here to hold anyone to a particular teaching. We're here to share what has worked for us. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, maybe there's something out there for you. But this is what I know. That I have moved to a place in my spiritual growth in many instances because I was willing to do the work. I was willing to do sometimes what others wouldn't. I was willing to take those 11 extra steps and be in a place that sometimes was uncomfortable, sometimes was scary, sometimes was really not the place that I wanted to be. Can you relate to that? Yes. We've all been there. And yet, that is the place where we know we're in that transition time, and sometimes we just have to hold on during that transition time. I love that phrase, when one door closes, another one opens, but it's hell in the hallway. And sometimes that hallway is really an uncomfortable place to be. And this is where you get to show up and be willing to do what others will not. Lewis Rudd, he was willing to walk 11 more steps every day. The Dalai Lama, who, if anyone, has had a tremendous amount of... he's gone through a lot, would you agree? I mean, we all know what he's lost his country. He's lost millions of his fellow countrymen who were slaughtered. They tore down temples. I mean, Tibet has been ravaged. And he had to flee to another country. He lives in India now. And a reporter was asking him, how can you still be happy? Because every time you see the Dalai Lama, he's smiling, isn't he? Does he have a great smile? He has a great laugh. And a reporter said, how can you be happy when you have seen the devastation, when you have seen the slaughtering, when you know what has happened to your people? And I love what he said. He said, I feel everything, but peace is more than that. I feel everything, but peace is more than that. So he's making a conscious choice to take the 11 more steps from the conflict, from the turmoil, from what he can see in the outer world to that place of inner peace where nothing can be disturbed, Nothing can move. Nothing can change. It is that immovable, unchangeable spirit within us. When you can live at that place, the world is your oyster, my friends. None of us are perfect at that. We all get to practice this on a regular basis, don't we? We get all smiled up in here. We get hugged up and loved up. And then we walk out and someone cuts us off on Arrowwood and we go, "Arr!" We go right back to our humanness, don't we? That's life. But the quicker we can rebound, the quicker we can come back, the quicker we can realize the truth, that is our work. I'm going to close with a story about this young man. His name is Matt Dorio. Matt has worked for several professional teams, sports teams. He is now working for the Portland Trail Blazers. Isn't that smile great? He has a great smile. He's an infectiously enthusiastic young man, and he loves his job. He shows up as God, as Matt, and is doing a fantastic job in this spiritual world. He got tested one day. He was in the grocery store line. I'm going to read to you because he tells it so much better than I. He says, "I was just standing in the cashier line at the grocery store. I wore my Portland Trail Blazers Pride sweatshirt today to work. It's one of my favorite articles of clothing. An older gentleman standing right behind me decided to say, 'Why are you wearing that rainbow shirt? Are you some sort of—'" And there was a homophobic slur there, which I'm not going to repeat. Now, they're just standing in line at the grocery store. And this man behind him is not only being rude, but being unkind. And Matt says back to him, very nicely, "Well, sir, I am a gay man, yes. And I wear this to show people that I'm not only proud of myself and my community, but also the organization I work for, who supports diversity, equity, and inclusion." Now, at that point, Matt's proven himself to be the bigger man here. He did not stoop to the level of the first man, and he just said his piece, turned around, and continued waiting in line. That would have shut most people up, but not the man behind Matt. The man continued to badger Matt. He said, "Have fun in hell. Hope you're proud of the choice you decided to make." This man then goes on to mumble homophobic slurs to me the whole time I'm waiting in line. I ignore him, I pay for my food, and I start to walk away. When we are in a space where unskilled behavior becomes apparent, and that's what I like to call it, unskilled behavior. I may be a little bit more skilled in kindness and compassion as you are. But there are lots of unskilled people out there, are there not? Who will hide behind hate, hide behind all kinds of things that we know are not the truth. And so, in the midst of unskilled behavior, this is where you get to walk your 11 steps. This is where you get to show who you really are. And Matt had done so in a kind and compassionate manner. But the story isn't over yet. Because the law of karma, the law of cause and effect, comes swinging back like a tornado. As Matt's walking away from the checkout towards the door, he hears the man who has only 3 things being rung up, and then he hears that the card that the man has used has been declined. And the cashier tries it again. It's declined again. Now, Matt is on his way out the door. He's on his way out. He hears this, and of course, to the great embarrassment of the man, he turned around. He walked the 11 steps back to the cashier. He pulled out his card and he said, "Here, I'll pay for it." The man was stunned. The whole line was stunned because they had seen what had gone down. So the cashier rings up his groceries, And the old man was completely baffled after having treated him so unkindly that Matt had come back and done this. And Matt says, he looked at me and said, "Why would you do that?" I said, "Well, sir, unlike my sexuality, which is not a choice, I'm choosing to be a nice person. I hope you find it in your heart to understand your words can be hurtful, but I'm choosing to see you for the person that you are, and I wanted to help you." The old man said nothing, and Matt walked away. Yeah, wow. Matt walked those 11 steps back. He did not have to do that. He certainly was in his righteousness. When you think, I have a right to be angry in this, that's a really tricky place to be in. He had a right to be angry with being called such horrible names. And yet, he looked above that and saw that man for who he was, another spiritual being on the path who simply was unskilled in how he was handling life. We all have something very valuable to learn from Matt. And Matt ended by saying, "Take the high road, people. Be the better person and show people that hate is never the answer. Be brave, stand up, and kill them with kindness." Yes. Isn't that fabulous? Yes. This young man, I tell you, if this is our future, we are in very good hands. This is a young man who gets it, who understands that we've got to take those 11 more steps to whatever it is that we are here to do. And life will show up. I loved our first song. How can I serve today, sweet Spirit? If you simply ask that question, guess what? Spirit will find a way to put something right in your path. And you get to go, oh, this is mine to do. And that will be your soul's greatest adventure if you allow it. So what in your life is calling you forward to take 11 more steps? What in you is saying, I need to take more steps here. I need to go deeper. I need to dive in. I need to understand what I'm here to be and who I'm here to be and whose I'm here to be. I invite you this week to take 11 more steps. It will be the greatest adventure you've ever had. Namaste. Good catch. All right. Okay, what's next? What's next? What's next? Oh, we got another song. Oh, we got a prayer. I guess I get to do a prayer. All right. That is what is in front of me to do. All right, so let's just take all that in. And let's just know the truth. The truth that we are absolutely capable and have the kindness, have the courage, have the capacity, have the bravery, have what it takes to take those 11 more steps in our lives. I call forth the very best of ourselves, the highest consciousness, the highest awareness, that highest space within us that knows that we are absolutely here to be on point and on purpose for God. I know that Spirit is having its way with us right now. It is gently calling us to that expanded awareness. It is gently calling us to a greater expression of life on this planet. I know that each one of us is now saying yes to that calling, saying yes to that higher expansion and awareness that knows that we are on the right path. One foot in front of the other. We don't need to worry about what's a mile down the road. What's the next step? And then the next, and then the next. I know that I have within me, as does everyone within the sound of my voice, that which I need to know at the moment that I need to know it. That which I need to know will be revealed to me in the moment that I need to know it. That which I need to hear will be heard in the moment that I need to hear it. And so I know that each one of us is saying an affirmative to all that is going on within our life. We are blessing it. We are knowing that it is calling us to a greater experience. We are knowing that there is only God in all of our activity. We are knowing that even in the difficulty, even in the unkindness, even the unskilled behavior that might be displayed around us, that we can call it good and very good. And so I just say thank you, Spirit, for allowing us to see the truth of who we are and who everyone on our path is, a divine being, a divine being, a divine being, and only a divine being. There is no separation. We are all one. We let it be so, and together we say, and so it is. Amen.